Welcome to Showing Our Sass, the podcast. I am your host, Marta Gwen, and this season I am thrilled to introduce my good friend AC Atre Mali, author Snodgrass, as we tackle topics that tend to make people clutch their pearls, especially when it comes to health and wellness. This season, we are going to tackle all kinds of topics related to taking control of our health, and we promise not to pull our punches, because we are living through a time where we just don't have time to play about our health. AC is one of those people who are driven to fight for what's right, whether it's raising awareness for her community of persons living with type 1 diabetes or pushing for fair and equitable treatment of union workers. AC uses her body and her voice to help others. AC also has a habit of trying on a lot of other people's clothes and dancing in front of cameras. You might call her a model, but she would say she just has fun doing things she loves. So without further ado, I present to you Showing Our Sass, Season 1. Let's get into it.
I probably have watched too much maternity court. I probably watched too much.
Well, they were the fad. They were the rage when we were coming up.
I love paternity court. I love the stories. I love genealogy. So I love actually the stories of people coming together or not being together, whatever. I love it. But that's something that happens often, is that sometimes the woman she'll come in there and say, hey, this is your child. And he says, no, it's not. And she'll say, but you said you wanted this baby. And he's like, oh, I was just saying that, or no, I didn't. And she'll say, well, you were with me when we took the IUD out. And he was like, no, what are you talking about? And that was what triggered a lot of this, was that there was a process. It's actually pretty painful, people say. It's a process that she took to say, at this moment, I am willing, ready, and able to procreate. This is the moment. But if I take this out now, I can start doing this thing. She still ended up in paternity court, but still, my point is if that moment of I'm going to reverse this was put in the hands of men, could they be as swayed? Would they be like, I really want to? Because men usually, the byproduct of sex for men is babies. Yes, men go through their biological clocks and they're wanting a child. They can't wait to have a little boy that can play the baseball in the backyard. They definitely have that. But the push and the expectation is a little bit different, culturally speaking. Outside, I'm West African, so it's a little bit different. But in American society, if a man doesn't have a child, they might say something about it. But for the most part, they're just like, whatever. But if a man is saying, hey, in this moment, I'm ready to procreate, I want to have a child with this person, not just anybody, but this person, I now have to make this appointment, because men don't go to the doctor. I need to make this appointment. I need to go see this doctor. I need to, explain to him what I'm wanting to do, because there's a whole conversation that's had before you actually get a vasectomy. You have to sign a paper and say, hey, I know this may, prevent me from ever having kids. But let's say he goes in there, he has the conversation saying, I'm ready to start having children. This is what I want to do. Oh, okay. And then they reverse it. And then he's like, okay, I'm out there. Let's do this thing. There's a point in his life that he's saying, I'm ready for this. I think that men don't often have the opportunities that women have, to where when you start your cycle, hey, I can get pregnant at any moment. When you start growing body hair in certain areas, you're like, hey, I'm that age where I can, things happen to a woman. I think that it's a little bit more obvious to let them know that in this moment, I'm fertile. Boys, if they mess around their pants from 10 to 110, there's not a point where it's like, oh, this is just semen. Oh, this is sperm with semen. There's no beginning and ending. So whatever they've been doing since they were children is the same thing they're going to be doing when they're 110. There's not that moment. And so if they have a moment to be like, hey, she's talked to me about having kids, I think I want to have kids with her, I'm prepared for this, I'm going to go in there and remove my IUD equivalent, then there's no complaint to say, hey, she tricked me. She did this, and there's no way to be fixed if it's in your hands. So
but you gotta phrase it in a way where it's like male empowerment in that way, kind of like birth control pills in the 70s became a women's empowerment thing, because it gave them greater control over when and how they got pregnant. It didn't do anything for disease prevention, but it could help them to not get pregnant, which, if you have too many babies too close together, can cause a health problem for women, and that's whether you're married or not. So there's only so much the system can handle, and there are good ways. And people who have large families with lots of children, usually they have figured out how to do it in a way where they can keep and maintain their body's health. Those women are fit You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
To be
Yes.
able to
Yes.
have healthy children like
Yes.
that in high
Yes.
volume, my hat's off to him, because I used to think I wanted 5 kids. That was probably from hanging around y'all. That was probably from hanging
Don't
around
say
y'all. I
y'all.
thought I wanted 5 kids, but now I look, I'm like, oh
Don't
Lord.
say y'all. I was not a part of that.
Woo. I'm talking about
I,
your family.
no, I should say yes, my family. But that's the thing though, is there was a conversation. Like there's something that says, hey, in this moment I'm ready for this. That's my concern, is that even if there was something that was not hormonal that could be done on the outside of a woman that didn't affect her hormones and didn't have to be so invasive, even if that existed, I'd be open to that. But most things are going to be either chemical or hormonally driven, or they're going to be very invasive, and that's just not safe. So for men, they have the blessing of having their organs on the outside. We can get right to it. And vasectomies are so fast that it's crazy. That I know women have had their tubes tied and uterus is removed and all this extra stuff. And I'm sitting there like, this only took 15 minutes. Why are we going through all of this? And why is this not something that we can do earlier on, you know?
It's because we're conditioned to think that the onus should be on fixing the woman's body so the man can do what the man wants to do. That's why I'm saying if anything were ever to happen, and I think that you'd never get consensus to go ahead and do vasectomies for babies, for baby boys. I don't think you'd ever. There's too much of a block in there. But I do think that there is the possibility of folks presenting this as an option to young men about the same age that young women come into the thing. And for me, I would find that to be an equitable solution at that stage. If a young man we'll say, we'll average it out, because I was precocious, so I became a woman capable of producing life at 9.
Right.
Traumatic Valentine's Day situation, end up being able to wear white jeans. We'll just say it that way. So, well, with comfort. I still haven't been bold enough to go ahead and put on white jeans again. I want some white linen pants, but I really do miss my white jeans, if they do make the behind look kind of wide. But
it's a good thing.
But I don't need any help in that category, seriously. But at least introducing that option to young men by the age of 12. This is a thing. I mean, because I think you would catch most at that stage before they really get into the humping and pumping.
But that's the thing, though. The reason why I was even saying a young age is because of the discomfort. And getting a vasectomy, from what I understand, is like a little bee sting, but it's not like, oh my God, I can't walk. It's nothing crazy like that. But women who have had their tubes tied have to lay in the bed and heal themselves. So, so it wasn't so much I'm saying babies, because they can actually get someone pregnant from birth.
No, because you're already doing something that causes pain, and so why not go ahead and snip and
knock it out? Yeah,
but because they think of snip, and that's the thing. You shut down the whole male brain. But actually, well before you and I started having this conversation, I'd had a different version of this conversation, and it was a reaction to women who allow men to impregnate them for the purposes of going and getting more benefits from the government, because I have encountered that situation in life. And I know you feel the same way I do. In shame on you if you use children in that manner. But I'm prepared to be judged.
I'm looking at society as an issue. If a person feels that they have to create more life to sustain the life that they have and the family that they have, that's a bigger issue. I feel like I'm looking. It's not like that everywhere in the world. Everywhere else in the world, you have children because you want to, not because you need to. And
that's how you should have children.
Yeah,
children have no say whatsoever in how they get here. So anyone who is prepared to engage in an act that can lead to life, new life being created, needs to understand that child had no part in your decision to bring them into the world. And so that's why I feel so strongly about that. If you're going to bring a child into the world, if you're going to do something that's going to involve you possibly bringing a child into the world, that child should know nothing but love.
I agree. Nothing. And that's the only purpose they should have is to be loved. And I totally agree. I have I have a lot of issues when it comes to putting responsibility on children, even emotional weight. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about how she was going to the doctor, and they ask you how many pregnancies you've had, how many miscarriages you've had, and things like that. And she was saying that that her family, the women in her family have a lot of miscarriages. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was something that could really be hereditary. I mean, I don't know anything about that. It's worth discussing it. And she's like, yeah, her mom had, I think, 2 before she had her. And I was like, oh man, whatever. She's like, yeah, I'm a rainbow baby and this, that, and other. And I told her, I said, something that I've heard often that always just kind of puts a weight on my heart, because I feel like it puts a weight on the responsibility of that child. That child is not just born because they just love you, but you now have the responsibility to carry all the hopes and dreams of all the babies that miscarry before you. And it's like, you shouldn't even know who could have been before you, because why do you even need to know that? I'm not saying don't tell your child, but to then say, this is what you are. You're this miracle. You're this.
Miracle baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if you want to sit around and, become a porn star? That's your life. You have not, what I'm saying? Whatever you want to do, you now have the weight of your parents' world on your back, thinking about all the things that you should be doing, because you are carrying the weight and responsibility and the souls, as she put it, of all of the children that could have been born before she was made. And it's just like, don't do that to a child. Let them just be their own individual something. Don't compare them or comprise their existence to, don't bring other things together to make that existence useful.
But in honesty, I mean, the act of having a child is one of the vainest, most selfish acts that a person can do. I want to see what I look like combining my egg with that sperm.
So yes, we do feel that way because we are child free. But I think the other people feel like, oh, I want something. I'm gonna love it. But they have different. People have a whole lot of mind, self-serving, unaware reasons why they want to have children. Oh, they feel obligated because of family. There's a billion reasons why people have children. But even if you're deciding to, my dog is snoring up a storm. But even if
you can barely hear him.
Okay, good. But even if it's your passion, it's not your baby's passion to carry the weight of the other children that didn't make it. That's my thing. You can have 75 babies. You can have 75 kids. If you would have had 76 but one lost its life, do not put that on the weight of your 75th child that you could have had a big brother. So you could have had a big sister. But see, what happened was, it's like, that's unhealthy. But see,
that goes back to another area of health that we really do need to expand our resources in, and that's mental and emotional health. Yeah. So, no one is born inherently knowing how to be an awesome parent. Yeah. All of it is really trial and error. You try to reach out to resources and whatnot. And most parents do their level best to do the best job they possibly can. Most parents do. And everybody comes at it differently. Oh, that brings me back to another thing too. We were talking about, it's best to give information to your child and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But then you add, because I'm going back into the sociological mindset, what if you're in a community where other people don't feel the same way as you? And I remember being in Iowa, and there were some things that were said in our houses that were not necessarily the same things that people prescribed outside in the community, wonderful community that it was. My parents tended to err on the side of information. And if there was ever something they were uncomfortable talking to me about, they certainly didn't stop me from getting a book and, exploring it and then trying their best to answer my questions or getting me to someone who could answer a question that I had about something. I think in your house, y'all also tended toward more information, which is one of the reasons why our families really did get along with each other so well. But girl, it takes work. It has taken years for me to begin to understand my own body, let alone the body of my committed partner, my husband. He is committed partner is my husband. And understanding that the bodies change and they shift and their needs change over time. And it's not like, oh, I made it across the finish line. I can just kick back. No. Oh my God. Because I told him, he's my it and forever. If we couldn't make this thing work till Jesus blow the horn or call us home, I was like, I'm done. I ain't trying to add another name to the back of mine. But so I'm like, I say that to say I'm invested, and as I invest in him, he invests in me. And that's how I need a partnership to work. In any marriage, you're always going to have times where you got certain things you work on more than others and whatnot. People need to understand that too. And that goes a little away from the reproductive health and more into the mental, emotional. Counseling is a beautiful thing, and take advantage of it and stop being so, mishish about it. I love mishish. I love the Yiddish. I don't know what I'm feeling the Yiddish today. But just becoming more comfortable in talking about things that are important and eliminating the feeling of taboo when it comes to this, because this stuff should not be taboo in our society. We have a whole porn industry because of our Puritan feelings and upbringing. Not Puritan, it's not Puritan feelings. It's the training that came along with the Puritan faith, the Puritan branch of Christianity, that was like, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, except for procreation. Sex is bad only when you're married. A woman who has sex outside of marriage has to wear a red scarlet. Hey, if a woman enjoys sex,
I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and she was talking about how her mom called her or something like that. She said after her honeymoon, it was like, oh, so how was? She's like, oh, it's great, whatever. She's like, oh, you like sex? And it shocked her that her mother had said that. And I told her, I was like, well, you may not know your mother's experiences of how she was introduced to sex, or if she's enjoying it with your dad. I mean, it's going. I have, like I say, a different relationship with my mother to where it's very open. But if you don't already have that kind of relationship with your mom, and you're finding out that she does not enjoy sex when you have begun having sex yourself, that's
horrifying.
That's just it's twisting. It's twisting up what you thought. You know what I'm saying? But it's also common. But it happens like that when a person may be engaging in an act that they weren't ready for, even within marriage. You got married young, things happen, and you're like, my body wasn't ready, so now I associate discomfort and pain because I wasn't ready.
Or they aren't comfortable telling their partner, hey, I didn't like how that felt.
I
like this. Could you do this? Because it's not a commentary on saying that you aren't good. I'm just saying, like, today, like, maybe I sat funny one day and now the spot's over here. So I need you to get over here. Get over here so we can both get this in.
That's basic. But she told me this the other day, she was, because, we were talking and she was just like, what? And she didn't know that her mother felt that way at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, that's a great door opening conversation to have, to talk to her about what her earliest experience with sex was. Like, that should be a conversation that about your mother's sexual health. And it sounds crazy because it's like, oh my God, you're my mom. But it opens up things that might make sense to you. I can't tell you, my mother has been so helpful to me through my walk of sexuality. Truly, she's like, look, you made a
Play Mama was helpful to me too. Okay,
I mean, and older women in general. I mean, I'm speaking to my mama just because she's my mama, but grown women who are open and honest with themselves will be open and honest with you, and they're great, resource for understanding. But she was like, hey, try a pillow like this. Hey, do it like that. She was very helpful. And so I was able to apply the things that she learned through working with her own self that I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? And so so when my friend was talking about she and her mother, it made me think. I was like, well, how did she learn about sex? What was her experience with sex? If your mother is telling you that she doesn't like it. I was part of a breastfeeding. This is off topic, but on topic. I was part of a breastfeeding survey. I was doing actually the survey work years and years ago. And we had to send out the surveys and do assessment or whatever. And we're sending them out to doctors, female doctors, and asking them if they breastfed and how long they breastfed. And the study was showing that when you yourself do a thing, you will promote others to do that thing. Mm-hmm. And so we'd ask, okay, do you have children? If you do, did you breastfeed them? If you did, how long did you breastfeed? And a lot of them were like, if we asked them, why did you breastfeed that long, or not at all, it was a conversation. And no judgment, just understanding. A lot of them said their schedules were too busy, or they breastfed a long time, and these are benefits, or these are things, whatever. We had all those conversations. But it showed that many doctors, at least at that time, this is when I was in high school, I was maybe 17 and doing all this data work, but it showed that the doctors that didn't breastfeed their children were not talking to their patients about the importance of breastfeeding. Whether or not you're able to do it, your body responds to it or not, whatever, but even presenting the possibility of it, bringing it up. Because now doctors have more of a list of things they discuss, like, hey, what's, like you said, what's your mental health of your family? Does anybody in your house hurt you? They talk about things differently now. But 20 years ago, when I was in high school, it was kind of like, it wasn't as specific, the conversations. And so if a woman was pregnant, they weren't saying at that point, are you planning on breastfeeding? Or what's your birth plan? You had to come and say you wanted to do those things. And so there were some women that were like, oh, I was uncomfortable. I didn't want anybody on me. I was already, what they said what they needed to say. And so applying sex into that, if your parent, male or female parent, is saying to you, ew, about sex, how do you feel about sex? If you like sex, you're excited, you want to talk to a family member about it and say, this is my great experience, and they're wincing at you, then you don't have a person that you can learn from. Because even if the person doesn't enjoy it, they should still be able to converse about it. But if it's a wall, then you're not going to benefit. And so it's sex is supposed to be enjoyable. And not that anybody's wrong if they don't enjoy it, but there's a reason why a person does not enjoy sex. And if the person does not enjoy sex and they have no one to seek out why not, and there's a person asking them about certain sexual things, there's not going to be any information or knowledge that can be gained in that situation. So
and if someone inquisitive, they're going to go search for whatever answer they can get wherever they can, whether it be good, bad, or ugly.
Right
and
or wrong.
That's where some people, certain positions work better for them than others.
Yes.
Facts.
Yes.
Some people get bored with one position.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole Kama Sutra mini issues that show the different ways in which you can put the combination of human bodies together for the purposes of pleasure. But oh my God, that's not something that you would set out on your coffee table unless you wanted to be considered to be a certain kind of person when people came over to visit. That's something you hide under the sock drawer, or whatever it is, if you're even open to having that kind of stuff, or you have a privacy filter on your browser so people don't think that you're doing something that you ought not do. Oh, hold on. Before I might set aside Planned Parenthood, but I got to talk about this. One of the other things I think that was a concern, particularly when we were coming up in the 80s and 90s in Iowa, was how wrongly the act of explaining sexual health could turn in the climate we were in that stranger danger kind of climate. Because say we were at home, and say you're 10 and your family is more open, because I think this was the case with both our families. We're more open to talking about what it is, what happens with your body, all the other kind of stuff. And we're saying, it's important to know the names of the body parts appropriately. And if something's growing or something feels weird or whatever it is, let us know so we go to the doctor, that kind of thing. But if you're in a really conservative community where, no, let me not say it that way, because I don't want this to sound like I'm being political. If you're in a community where people are uncomfortable talking about sexual health, reproductive systems, and things like that, let me be specific. And you as a 10-year-old are having a conversation with some of your friends and you start sharing some information, if your friend runs and tell their parent, somebody could send a social worker to your house thinking that you were being abused, simply because your family felt it was more important. And in the privacy of your home, we're trying to make sure you didn't go into the world uninformed or underinformed about your body's health. So the community dynamic can matter in that. When that kind of stuff could have got somebody locked up and in jail.
But like you said about when I was drawing the picture that I was drawing on the wall, was first and second grade.
They could have reported. They could have put a social worker on your mama for that.
Why does this little girl know what an adult penis looks like? It's because every
child should know what a penis or vagina does.
I know what they look like. I'm raised around people of all ages that are part of I come from a big family. It wasn't like I'm walking into the bathroom and my brother is peeing and I'm running out because he's peeing. I know it's not a problem. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, just like you said, it could have escalated to a level of madness. But the sad thing is that the person is being potentially accused of something for being informed. All of this information. And so it's not as if I'm saying, I was a little kid and I'm like, and you should, I don't know, do this with a penis. It wasn't even that deep. It's just what they look like. I just thought that you peed out of them by kindergarten. So I didn't know anything deeper than that, right? So, but even still, it's funny. I made a post on my post be getting me in trouble. I made a post about a meme that I saw that said, "Hey, I know COVID is scary, but what if it said, I know that COVID-19 is scary, but have you ever clogged up a toilet in somebody else's house?"
I saw that.
I saw that meme and I was like, is that a thing? And so I posted it and I was like, y'all, I gotta let y'all know, if y'all ever clog up my toilet, it's all good. We all poop. Like, I'll fix it. Like, is that a thing? Girl, inbox exploding. Page, I was like, nobody said anything, but then it was like, girl, what? Huh? I would die. I'm like, but everybody poops. It's a kid's book about that. You know what I'm saying? Half the population. I mean, poop, sex, food, it's all things that we all do. So I didn't know that people felt so disgusted with the idea of defecation. And my husband was like, he's like, AC, look, you work where you work with people who you have to help them because they can't help themselves and do certain things. And so it's like, that's why you're so okay with it. I was like, no, I grew up to be like, it's in a couple of minutes after I eat, I'm going to poop. Every living thing processes the food that it takes in. I don't understand why y'all losing your mind. So when I saw that meme, I was initially like, oh, that's weird. Y'all, is this a thing? And they're like, yes, oh my God, this happened to me. People are telling their stories. And it was just, but I look at sex the same way. That's the same reaction that I had talking about.
You can't see my face. I'm like,
yeah, I mean, it's like poop. Like if anybody comes to my house and it's like, hey, AC, I tried to handle it, but the toilet backed up. I just took a dump and it just didn't go down. I'm like, I got you. I would unplug it and we would continue with our day. I'm supposed to lose my mind? You're supposed to lose your mind for that? Like, I feel like
no, we just solved the problem. I'll tell you one that's really kind of funny, and this might end up in the outtakes. Boys are taught it's okay to go ahead and relieve themselves out in the woods naturally. And a lot of it has to do with hunt culture and all the other kind of stuff, because sometimes you go in a situation where you can go ahead and do that, right? Mm-hmm. To the point where I know when my brother was young, it was a thing. I'm sure he and Lawrence ran off and did this because I would see the evidence of it later. They would try to draw in the snow with their pee.
My brother taught me.
Out of that. But
yes,
girls are never. Ever. You got to go find a bush or something like that. You got to, I mean, girls are not, you're supposed to hold it. You're supposed to hold, even though you can end up having some significant damage to your bladder doing that kind of situation. It is not socially acceptable for a girl to go and pee up against a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to the point. And I know that it's taught, AC, I know that it's taught because I know there was one time when I was driving and I really miscalculated. It was probably a Sunday because it always happens on a Sunday. And I was like, oh crap, I got to find a place. I got to go use the bathroom. And I literally almost hurt myself because I was like, I can't stop. What if somebody sees me? Somebody might call the cops on me, all this other kind of stuff. A man would not have stopped and thought that long about it. They would have pulled over. They would have found the most convenient situation to go ahead and do as to not be seen as being lewd or whatever it is. And it would have handled the business. But because I had been trained, like my body physically wouldn't let me release the pee from my bladder that was bulging until I found a commode.
But that it's funny that you say that. My husband and I were just watching a show. I forgot what show it was. He just went upstairs. I would ask him what it was. It was a show we were watching to where they showed a woman squatting and peeing. And I was like, oh, this is wonderful. He was like, what? I was like, they never show a woman. They were out when it was, it doesn't matter. But we're watching the show and usually they have a guy who turn his back and stuff is going on behind them. And it's like they're peeing. They always pee on TV, but they don't show a woman out in the wilderness urinating. We just had this conversation. And it was, dang, what's the one with the robots? What's the robot show? It's going to bother me because I really want to remember it. But we just had this conversation watching this episode. He was like, why does it matter? I'm like, it matters because it's showing that we pee too. It's a natural, if you only saw on TV men eating, it's like women eat too. You notice the imbalance of the natural things that everybody does. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, our bodily functions are something to be hidden and be secret. I mean, for years, no one wanted to record the birth process because you'd be staring at a woman's vagina. In fact, that is considered to be pornographic. Yes, it is. Even now.
Even now people consider this being something taboo and they don't want to see. And I understand for women that don't want to watch it, thinking it might be more painful, so they don't want to watch it because it's almost like you having surgery done, you don't want to look. But for women that are like, I want to be a part of that process, it's a new thing where they're actually allowing you to look. Back in the day, they knock you out. The men were in the room. It was a complete disassociation from your own body. And it's really unfortunate because it's yours. There are people that know the inside of their car, the crevices of the inside of their car better than their own body. And it's like, really? And they know the stats of their car. They know all these things. But when you're asking them, hey, when's the last time you got a checkup? When was the last time you looked at yourself with a mirror? Dudes, men, have you looked at your nacho? Have you looked at your perineum recently? Do you know what it looks like?
You did another food thing. It slipped in. You did another food thing.
So have you looked at your perineum recently? Do you know what it looks like? Is it red? Is it okay? I mean, outside of landscaping, do you look at your body? And I'm not knocking my guys, but I say this all the time. There are not many things that women do the same from girlhood to womanhood. But as we all know, my husband's the same. The things that boys do, they do their whole lives, whether it's video games, whether it's whatever little hobby they got going on. They do it from boyhood to adulthood. There's not a woman that's playing with a Barbie right now, but we all had Barbies growing up for the most part. There's an understanding that men maintain and keep the expectation of youthfulness without the expectation of meeting certain expectations. And so it's like, it's a beautiful way to be, a beautiful way to live, to just kind of be like, hey, whatever happens, happens. Whatever this happens, happens. There's not that point where they're like, this is a time to shift. This is the time that needs to be different. That's outside of what a woman has to do. Because we're all going to graduate from high school or college, and we're all going to make those milestones. But when it comes to individual yet collective change, like I said with the woman's cycle, we all, for the most part, have all had our cycles as women, as biological women. We've all had our cycles. That's a shift from childhood to young ladyhood. There's not a shift for men. So I'm thinking of something that can help them shift to start seeing things a little bit differently so we can hold them to a higher level of expectation.
I'll roll that back just a little bit though, because men do have ebbs and flows, and I know you know this, of their sexual desire. And that's something that they don't get taught enough about either, and then start thinking that something's wrong with them. You know, in their teens and 20s, they're like rearing to go. And then when they slide into, you know, the 30s and whatnot, that drive can go down a little bit. And that can be problematic in a marriage, because when are men most likely to go ahead and figure out it's time to hang up their spurs and get in a committed relationship? It's usually going to be around when they hit those 30s, right? Because they've had the fun of their 20s. So if you're getting married, you've done all this stuff, exploration and whatnot, and you consider yourself to be fairly virile, you've landed yourself a prize of a wife, and then all of a sudden, your desire goes down after you get married,
and you ain't going to the doctor, because a lot
you're not going to the doctor. Your wife is thinking she's made a mistake, possibly because maybe y'all was previewing a little bit, maybe not, but she gets there. If she's one who's held out and, you know, she's ready, okay, I'm ready to go. Because at the same time, women's reproductive drive starts going, whoo, you know, when you hit those transitions going into 30. So like, she's like, come on, let's go. 3 times a day and twice on Sunday, you know, I mean, something like that. And then she's not able to get the, I mean, that can lead to relationship problems, breakups, misunderstandings, heartbreak, damage to children who might come in during the time.
That's it. Whole health. That will, the ebb and flow of sexual desire is natural with both men and women. And when those ebbs and when those flows happen, it's something that is natural to both men and women. And the sad thing is that, like you said, even if we, you know, threw a couple of pads at the girls when they were in 3rd grade and explained to boys that they had a penis and the penis got the girls pregnant, we weren't talking about the long-term full sexual health. So they don't know what to do with it.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Showing Our Sass, the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and in fact, we'd love for you to jump in and tell us what you think. Remember to share, like, subscribe, comment, all those good things, and we'll see you again next week.